Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new MDs, mothers, doctors, and scientists. The integrative physician is in, and this is episode, I can't believe it, 41 today, and live podcast. And we're podcasting to, we're doing Facebook, X, Rumble, and YouTube. So hopefully you'll watch us on one of those platforms. So tune in later. All these podcasts live on gmoscience.org/ the new MDs. So today's podcast is a hot topic, and I am honored to bring on our featured guest today, Theodora Scarato. But before I bring her on and talk about her amazing accomplishments and our topic today, Beyond the Cloud, the AI Gold Rush, who pays the price? Let's just chat a little bit about that. So, again, who am I? Let me introduce myself because I always forget to do that. I'm Michelle Pero. I am an MD, integrative physician. I'm a homeopath and author of 2 books. Old book, What's Making Our Children Sick? New book, just out on Amazon, Making Our Children Well. Parents, that book is for you. It is focused empowering you and your family with nutrition and homeopathy. It's almost 500 pages long, and I hope you enjoy it. Please pick up a copy. So, what we want to get into today is artificial intelligence. It may live in the cloud, but its blueprint is firmly in the ground. And sitting down today with you, Theodore, I want to explore the hidden costs of AI, massive data centers. We're going to talk a lot about EMFs, from resource consumption to the environmental impacts on our kids, which is always my focus. And so, what I'd like to do is first introduce you and read a little bit about your bio, which is brilliant and nothing short of impressive. So, folks, in case you don't know Theodora, she is director of the Wireless and EMF program at Environmental Health Sciences, a leading national nonprofit focused on environmental health issues from plastics to pesticides, EMFs, and a nationally recognized expert in environmental health policy related to cell towers, wireless radiation, and EMFs, electromagnetic fields. I know, Theodore, you have co-authored several scientific papers, which we will also link on our website, and a special expert to the International Commission on the Biologic Effects of Electromagnetic Fields. I just also add that your work was pivotal in a landmark federal case, maybe you can even mention that, against the FCC, in which the court mandated, I want to make sure I get this right, the agency that mandated the agency to explain how the 1996 cell tower radiation exposure guidelines were inadequate regarding children's vulnerability. So, and let me say hi to you, welcome, and perhaps you can enhance your bio a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to, and then we can get into our show today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I've been working in the field for about 15 years of technology and children's health with the goal of having safe technology. But what's happened and what we're going to talk about today, and thank you so much for having me on, will be how fast technology is going without the safeguards and guardrails that we need to protect children who are more vulnerable to all of the harms of technology, right? From screens and AI, and also from electromagnetic radiation. So I'm really glad to be sharing this information.
Well, thank you so much. I am a big fan of your work. I have followed you for a long time, since your work at EHT, Environmental Health Trust, and now your own nonprofit. It is a nonprofit, folks, and we all work on donations. That's how we keep going. And let's start with what are EMFs, and can you explain the difference, let's say, between wireless radio frequencies, extremely low frequency fields, ionizing radiation, just a basic understanding for the audience so we all have an understanding on the same wireless playing field.
Sure. So electromagnetic fields are invisible. You can't see them, you can't taste them. Some people can hear them, but they're not, you can't see it. But everything, let's start with wireless. So when we talk about non-ionizing electromagnetic fields, you might often hear that there's not a problem because it's non-ionizing, which means it doesn't directly knock off the electrons and cause DNA damage directly. However, that doesn't mean that it can't cause harm. Non-ionizing electromagnetic fields are everywhere for modern technology, like your cell phone, cell towers, things like this speaker, which is off right now, your home cordless phone, but especially cell towers and infrastructure that's outside, that's going to cause continuous exposure. Then there's lower frequencies. So the electromagnetic spectrum is a wide range of things. From there's nuclear radiation, which is over here, it's ionizing, and X-rays, those are ionizing. And there's an agreed scientific understanding that it causes harm, although not to the degree of what the science says, right? Because children are more vulnerable, and we don't even have adequate regulations for nuclear radiation. Then in the non-ionizing range, there's wireless, extremely low frequency fields, like from power lines, high voltage power lines. And you can also be exposed from cords that you might have, electrical cords, with wiring in your home as well. And the thing to remember is kind of like this is blue syrup. It's artificial. It's fake. It's person made. This is not natural to have this. And same with wireless and all of the non-ionizing exposures that we're going to talk about today. They are synthetic, artificial. They are human made, and they are not natural. We weren't evolved underneath these frequencies. And there's a growing science that has been going on for a long time showing harm. And scientists, hundreds of scientists, that are saying we need to reduce our exposure to protect public health and the environment.
You know, it's so interesting because I've read papers going back as early as the 60s and 70s out of Russia talking about microwave radiation and radiation sickness, and their scientists were getting sick from working in those arenas. I have a whole section in my book to dump the microwave. Also,
yes,
it's radiation that you don't need. So any accessory radiation is really bad news. And I think people are so addicted to their routers and their Wi-Fi, their radiation sources, that they just won't give them up, including their cell phones. It's extremely seductive, addictive. But there is pushback, and we can get into when we talk about schools. I'm going to save that for a minute because there is some pushback by parents. And so we're always thinking about solutions in this show on what we do. But I want to get into now, thank you for the explanation. So we've kind of have this is a quick understanding of EMFs, and there's so much stuff on Theodora's website to learn more about this, folks, chock full. But I want to talk about children and their specific vulnerability. What does the science say about EMFs and children's health, especially regarding brain development, sleep, reproductive, hopefully not, oxidative stress, and even cancer signals? Now, you're not a physician, folks. This is not medical advice, but our children are uniquely vulnerable. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, well, they absorb more of the radiation deeper and more intensely into their brain and body compared to adults to start. So there's these higher intense peaks of exposure. But even if the exposure were the same, they're more vulnerable because their brains and bodies are still developing, just like you talk about with chemicals and pesticides and heavy metals and so forth. At stages of development, there can be impacts that you have that you don't have later that are irreversible, long lasting, and quite significant, even with low level exposures. So modeling of, for example, a phone to a child's head compared to an adult head has found levels that are significantly higher, 2-fold greater in the cerebellum, 2 to 5-fold greater in the eye. And of course, the eye is still developing in terms of how it can block out different light and so forth, and 10-fold greater into the skull. And there's also science showing higher levels from cell towers into children's brains, and studies that have shown much higher than the cell phone use when you look at the cumulative exposure over days, because it's 24 hours when you have a tower near your bedroom window, which unfortunately is what a lot of people are waking up to find out is coming, which is cell towers right in front of where they live or work or play. And then we have regulations that were set in 1996, unchanged, and they're based on an adult. a 220-pound adult male with a gigantic head. They're not based on children, on newborns, on infants who, I'm seeing like people holding the phone with their baby, they're newborns, and they don't know because this information has been withheld from the companies aren't telling us, neither is the federal government that doesn't want to inform the people more about it and set protective limits. And that's what our lawsuit was about, which I can talk about later. But there needs to be a full accounting of this issue and oversight, transparency, and safety standards that protect us. So that's what I'm working on.
Well, you're so right, because children are not many adults. We've said that on this show a million different ways, and their skull thickness is much thinner than adults. They absorb more frequencies in their brain as compared to adults. This causes more oxidative stress, leading to health issues. There are definitely increased cancer signals in kids who exposed to more frequencies. There is an alarming thing I've noticed. I was in the gym yesterday, and we have a lot of kids who come to this gym, and just casually looking around, I'd say 70% of those kids had an AirPod and attached to a Bluetooth while they're working out. And I can't tell you how many kids, these are young high school, college kids home for the summer, how many kids were on their phones intermittently while exercising. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the AirPods, and which makes me crazy. But as you're exercising, you have increased blood flow. And I'm thinking, is this a good thing or less of a good thing if you have in your ear, this may not be the best thing ever. So can you comment on these ear or AirPods? I keep saying AirPod, they're AirPods.
Yeah, AirPods, wireless, Bluetooth, things wearables that go close up to you, but that's right near the brain. And you'll often hear, oh, it's so low, the levels are so low, but actually they're not low to the cell. And there's a study that just came out of Yale where they looked at human organoids, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which are cells that have been grown in the lab. It's not actually, they don't have consciousness, but they are human tissues and cells that are grown. And then scientists will test toxic exposures on these organoids. And it was cortical organoids tested at Yale. And they used levels to mimic AirPod level radiation exposure, Bluetooth. And it was at 4,000 times lower than a cell phone. Than FCC limits. So the levels they used were 4,000 times lower than FCC limits. And they found damage to neurodevelopment, as well as impacts to the expression of genes involved in autism. And there are so many studies showing effects at low levels. Not all studies, but then we have the complication of industry-funded studies that also add a layer of complication to sort of sorting out why scientists will often say, well, it's not proven, or the government will say it's not proven because there are all these studies that don't show harm. But that study alone should be like, whoa, this is not, and this was just published last year. And I contacted the authors just to check to make sure I understood what they were saying. I was like, do I have the exposure right? Is it really 4,000 times lower than FCC limits? And they confirmed that. And they also took apart, that there's just a lot.
4,000 times higher than the FCC limits?
Yeah, they were 4,000 times lower.
Lower than the
FCC.
Lower
than FCC limits for a cell phone.
Wow.
So
well, I haven't seen a lot of data on, children and the use of, the AirPods. I haven't seen great studies on it. It's really hard to measure brain frequencies. It's not so easy to study this from, a technical perspective. And the clinical symptoms from electromagnetic frequencies can be very vague. And I've seen kids with EMF sensitivity. It's hard to diagnose because
Mm.
they can have some sleep disruptions, some headaches, some uneasy feelings, just maybe cranky behavior. There's like 100 things that can cause those symptoms. So it's really hard to pinpoint. But I did have one kid once that I was consulted on, 12-year-old girl who had poor sleep for 2 years. The first question I asked her, where does she sleep in your house? And they said, above the garage. Her bedroom is literally above the garage. The router was in the garage right underneath her bed. So I said, shut the router off. They did. It was the first night she slept in like 2 years. I mean, so I have lots of anecdotes, clinical anecdotes like that, where we show harm and we show that kind of thing. But that doesn't change hearts and minds, Theodora. Any comments about that?
Well, there's science. I mean, there's published studies that show impacts to sleep,
Yeah.
studies that show impacts to brain waves during sleep, studies that show impacts to memory. There was a study on children, adolescents, who use cell phones, and the ones who use the cell phones more often up to their head had damage to the memory centers exactly where they had simulated. They actually had looked at where the highest levels of the radiation exposure would be. So they matched that to tests that the kids took, and a year later they had damaged memory. There's studies showing increased cancer, increased headaches, damage to sperm and the reproductive organs, especially in experimental animals. Now, I have not seen a study that looked at kids using AirPods because it's a new technology and no one's done that study, but that doesn't mean that that can't have an impact, or that there's enough study to warrant not using a wireless earbuds in your ear, because they leave it in their ear.
Yeah. They leave it there all day. They're walking around with those things, just whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
I've seen kids on school campuses. Speaking of schools, like, what's your feeling? Do you feel like school campuses are now like a major exposure environment? Because there is some pushback from parents now in public schools and more in private schools, actually, that they, especially in here, what I've heard from my colleagues in Silicon Valley, which is not that far from me, the computer people don't want their children on devices, on routers during schools, particularly younger children. And so it's happening in private schools. First, it was this rollout where every kid in school got a laptop. They call them AlphaPads or, iPads, etc., learning pads. And I thought, oh God, this is the worst thing, because we know learning is so much more improved when every sense is engaged and not with a computer screen, but using writing and reading and involving your motor system. Any thoughts about the schools and children?
Yeah, we've been working on schools. I've been working on schools since the very beginning. And prior to pivoting to environmental health work, I actually was a social worker working in schools, and I saw so many of the changes in my clients. I worked in special education, and what I've seen, just kind of top down for a minute, is just the decreased, and this is backed up by studies that show all the tech, too much tech decreases your educational, the goals that you have for kids in school, plus impacts them socially and emotionally, and how kids are even getting along in the classroom. When I first started giving talks on this, I went to a national teacher union conference here in DC, and every teacher was like talking about how they couldn't teach anymore. And this was a decade ago now. They were talking about how the kids were texting. We know all this, right? We know all this now, and it's more accepted. But what I think needs to be understood is that there's this invisible other layer that needs to be looked at, which is the wireless radiation from all of these devices. Because now we have phones, AirPods. Remember, when you have a AirPod, you also have a phone it's connecting to. So you've got the phone radiation, which is probably going into your hip, reproductive organs. Then you've got the device in your ear. Then you've got the laptop up to your chest, breast, head. And then you've got the routers in the room. You might have these charging systems for the laptops in classrooms where you get 30 or 40 cords. Kids are backed up to those. and no understanding. Like there's no one even knows it's there, that this invisible exposure is happening to the kids, to the teachers, and then there's cell towers outside. So we've been working, and many scientists and public health folks are working on this. No cell towers at schools. That's not a place for cell towers. And some communities have already gotten their school district to prohibit them, like Temecula, and Los Angeles has done this several times over the years. They've passed resolutions on that, as well as, over here in Loudoun County has passed a ban on cell towers. And we believe that there needs to be wired tech. And of course, there needs to be not as much tech,
Yeah.
Writing, handwriting is so important to development, moving your body, just everything you talked about. Why should kindergartners have a tablet?
There was a terrific case here, and I mean terrific in the worst sense and the best sense, in Ripon, California, it was about 10 years ago, it was about 2015, where several students and teachers developed cancer after they put a cell tower right in the schoolyard, literally. And I believe it was the parents and the PTA that got it taken down, and they did they got it removed. So I just want to remind people the power of getting together. And if you see this looming in your schoolyard, in your neighborhood, near a hospital, even near the dog park, I think everyone needs to rally. Animals are extremely sensitive, and they're like totally overlooked in the conversation.
That's
And
right.
they're a smaller size, and they're very electromagnetically sensitive. Horses, extremely so. So, and sometimes it only manifests as behavioral changes. That's all we'll see are behavioral changes. So this might be a good time to pivot to what I really want to dive into, a deep dive now, because it's everywhere we look. There is now someone talking about data centers, and I'm like, yeehaw. And these AI driven data centers, I believe now there are 4,000 data centers across the US, and we're in supposedly some race with China, but I don't know. But I really wanted to query, Theodora, is concerns you might have about EMFs in data centers. Should we be concerned? What are your thoughts about this? Let's start talking about why this should be considered, and if it's a threat to our kids.
Yeah, so data centers are bringing together water, water pollution, air pollution, land industrialization, noise, and EMF. And there are three kinds of EMF that we've identified. One is the power line, the extremely low frequency magnetic fields from the new high voltage power lines that are needed to serve them. Mm-hmm. So there are these massive transmission line proposals across the nation that are happening. They're cutting through people's yards, schools, where they're putting in these new high power lines, and people aren't being informed of the EMF levels. There's no concern about that because we don't even have standards for extremely low frequency for magnetic fields, EMF, in the United States. Then there's dirty electricity or harmonics, which refers to how the data center with all of that electrical equipment, there has been research, a Bloomberg report that showed impacts to power quality up to 20 miles, even 50 miles away.
Wow.
Where there's erratic, the waves don't become smooth, they become erratic, the power that's delivered into your home. Mm-hmm. And that also means that it comes out, actually. So dirty electricity is a word you've probably heard, harmonics or interference. It comes out of the wires into your home.
Oh, God.
And yeah, that alone that needs to be addressed. We need to be measuring and monitoring it in the companies. The data centers need to clean that up. Then the third thing is that so for every data center, you have these lines like an octopus, all these lines coming off. I don't even want to use an octopus in this example, actually. Maybe we can think of it like anyway, some other term rather than a beautiful animal. But so all these lines are coming off of the data center to serve it of power, and those are emitting EMFs. But then also, once you have these new power lines in communities, you can pop wireless antennas on top of those big tall towers. So
Oh,
you've probably seen that, where there's like these massive power lines cutting through, and then you'll see wireless antennas on top, like it's a cell tower and a high voltage transmission line at the same time.
mhm.
So, because once you've sort of made something be commercial, you're no longer, the process can change depending on the community for how easy it is to turn that into now a cell tower. So there are a lot of issues here, and we are just ringing the alarm bell on that because there's so much that can be done. And there are communities all over the country that are now elevating this issue, talking about it, asking for safety, demanding through their elected officials that the companies inform them about the EMF. One letter I read from a community, from the elected officials of the county, said, "We want to know how you think this is safe. I want the studies, the names, the dates." They had like the most incredible letter. And I'm just like, wow, people are waking up on this.
Well, you bring up, there is so much to unpack, and there are so many good points here because just from the electromagnetic frequency perspective alone, this is so harmful to your children, wildlife, your own health, your own well-being, the whole package. And additionally, all these data centers have backup generators, which
Yes.
also generate. We're just talking about EMFs. We're not even talking about the air
Mm.
pollution that's generated, the noise pollution, the water usage and contamination issues, the land grab for the data centers. There are so many things that are wrong with the data centers, people not being able to exercise their rights in terms of these things popping up and losing their property, saying, or losing their water rights. It happened here in California, in Tahoe. 50,000 residents were out of water. They said, nope, we need it for the data center. We have to feed AI. So maybe before, I want to ask you some questions about the US. How can people organize? What can they do in their communities? Data centers coming, word gets out, usually on social media or your neighbor or next door. Somehow the word is leaking out. Not that we'd ever hear it from an elected official. We never have around here, I'll tell you that. How can people organize? And I wrote a Substack about this, and I have a whole section on what people can do. But I know you've been involved firsthand with this. Give me some ideas that we can share with listeners what they can do when it's come knocking on their door.
Yeah, I would say start now with having a protective ordinance around data centers and
Mhm.
these corridors. So if you don't have one, which, like, for example, I'm in Montgomery County, we're right above Washington, D.C., and there is a data center proposed, but we don't have any kind of zoning or ordinance or regulatory framework for it. And if you don't have one, then they can come in and put their facility in without any kind of measuring, monitoring for the land, air, water, EMF, not for anything. So the first thing you want is find out, do you have an ordinance for data centers? And if not, now's the time to get a protective ordinance that ensures safeguards and protections are in place. Because if you don't have that, things can be put in, like with all of these diesel generators, say. I mean, in Virginia, there are hyperscale data centers with dozens of diesel generators going all the time. So unacceptable. I mean, each piece of this, from the noise to the air, is an issue that needs, it's like a little onion. You have to say, here's what will work, here's what won't work, here's the measuring, the monitoring, the transparency, the oversight, the compliance. And I would offer that we are not ready for data centers in the United States, because right now the technology needs to be more mature to ensure safety. And what's being put in is not safe. Now, other countries are doing more on this. They are going, no, or we have to do better than what's
Mhm.
happening. And we shouldn't be getting old technology, or, like, what's going in is not acceptable. And they need to be, we need to be incentivizing and innovation. And our policymakers need to hear that, so that they, if communities say, here's what we want, here's how you can do it, industry will innovate. And
Mhm.
that's ultimately what we need. So get an ordinance, educate your community, have teach-ins, have meetings, have a petition. Some communities are doing a referendum on, are we, on it. Our community, we ended up with a moratorium that just got signed 2 weeks ago. So educate, talk to your elected officials,
Mhm.
go to meetings.
Yeah.
There's so much that can be done. And at Environmental Health Sciences, ehsciences.org, you type in data centers, we have things you can do with your elected officials. We are about to come out with a briefing on power line EMF, showing what different states are doing, and
Mhm.
it ain't much. So what it will show is that we can do better than what we got right now. And we also have a whole parent toolkit on cell towers at schools, how to get your school district to have a ban on cell towers at schools. And I think it's a really good tool to educate your community too. So yeah, a lot going on, and I'm in. So anyone can contact me as well if you want a meeting or you want to learn more. We are just we're all in on this, and we hope that everyone will be, get up to speed, so you can take this and use it in your community.
So what we're talking about here is community building, community activism, grassroots activism. This is a get up off the couch and turn off Netflix movement. Everyone needs to step into the conversation. This is not about what you're doing and I'm doing. This is what we're all doing together. And this is a call out. This is across parties, across colors, across shapes and sizes. Children really don't fall into political parties, do they? Health is not a political agenda, right? So we'd like to say everyone can come together on this issue. It affects all of us. Not, and if you're not into children, okay, maybe you love your dog or your cat or your chickens. They're also sensitive to what's happening. So this and I'd say, this is also an opportunity for retirees.
Mm.
Retirees are an untapped resource in your communities. You have retired lawyers, environmentalists, and people who've done this kind of work, and see if they would step in, because often they'll work pro bono and they don't need the income. So they can get someone who's perhaps a retired lawyer to go your next town hall meeting. And please, it's your civic responsibility to engage your children. When you show up to these town halls with your kids and you have an 8-year-old get to the mic and talk about why they're worried,
Oh,
it is powerful. Those town councils are stunned. They don't say a word because out of the mouths of babes. So let your kids speak. Thank you. Find your rep and bring your kids to meetings, and also to teach them about the democratic process, what
yeah.
exercising their voice really means and coming together. This is going to be a battle, folks. I got wind of a couple things I wanted to ask you about, that Erin Brockovich has joined this campaign and she's fierce and I just love her, and I loved her movie, the movie about her with Julia Roberts. That's one thing. And I also wanted to talk a little bit, if you knew about what's going on in Utah with Stratos, this massive data thing, which is basically drying out, Great Salt Lake Basin there, of, a salt lake. It's like, my gosh. So I don't want to wander too far, but any thoughts about those two things? And then I'm going to hit you up with some more questions because I've got like so many things I want to ask you about. Any of your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you talked about speaking up at meetings, and I remember my first time speaking at a meeting, and I just was scared to death. I mean, now I speak at meetings all the time, but I just thought, what took me there was just my kids. It was just like, this is what has to happen, and I need to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that it's going to be greater than this one moment. In my community, I was actually trying to deal with an artificial turf field that was going in right down the road, and I didn't really even understand how the government worked, honestly. It wasn't something I did. But now I really see the value. And what's incredible is how effective people can be, even a smaller group, just in terms of getting organized and educating all the people in the community. It's amazing what can happen. And now to the water. I mean, it's outrageous what is happening. They consume, data centers consume so much water for what they're doing, and they are contaminating water because then they also bring the water back. It's a little bit evaporated. So if it already has a contaminant in it, then it's going to be even more. Also, you don't want warm water going into your natural bodies of water. That impacts the wildlife, the fish, and so forth. So there was a $3.5 million verdict handed down to Amazon for nitrate contamination from one of its facilities. There were reports of miscarriages and cancer. And, you know, this should not be allowed in any community where our water, plus your land, the land, it's really a land grab in a way. I mean, we're talking about acres and acres and acres of land that's being used. And will it ever be able to go back? It's going to be impervious surface, right? I mean, there's so many issues with data centers. And it's not for you looking up using AI for your recipe. It's not for these uses that industry will say, oh, but you want it. You want your AI. That's not what it's for. It's for data crunching, enterprise use, meaning corporate use, often taking our information and sifting through it, like harvesting our data to understand us better, to sell us more things. So things have really gotten out of whack. And I think there needs to be just a reframe. We need to have a conversation about technology. You know, is this ethical? How do we proceed with protections for the kids and for our future generations? Because the road we're going on is reckless.
I couldn't agree with you more. I share all your concerns, and it seems to me we need to have a national moratorium on data centers. It can't be state by state. It needs to be at a federal level, a moratorium. And you know, we're going to get such pushback. So it's going to be a fight, and they really want to roll these in. I've heard rumor, of course, and you know, that these data centers are more about surveillance and they're rolling out 6G. And I thought maybe this would be an opportunity if you could explain what that's about. And you kind of started to touch about the surveillance aspect of it and monitoring our biometrics, which I don't agree on. I have certainly concerns about your privacy and what that means to your child. But maybe your thoughts on this, Theodora, about what that could look like and what that actually means.
Yeah, well, 6G is, you've heard about 3G, 4G, 5G. Now they're on to 6G, which is going to roll out in 2030. And that's going to bring the robot revolution. It's going to tie together the Internet of Things, but with AI everywhere. And it's called edge computing. You'll hear that word, which means the AI will not just be in the data center, but at the cell tower or in your device. It'll be part of the system. And in order to do that, they need to fast track cell towers plus the infrastructure, like the fiber optic, all the lines that are going to connect the technology to data centers. You're going to have these fiber optic lines, much more than we have now. Not what's coming to your home and bringing you fast internet. We're talking about much bigger amounts in order for all that information to be moving at the speed of light. And so they are stripping at the local level, your city, town, or state level, trying to preempt the ability of local communities to have a say as to the digging for these lines or where cell towers go. And it's all for 5G. And the companies say that's what it is. But 5G is not even for us. I mean, they want, you think about it like, those Ring cameras.
Mm-hmm.
So all the flock cameras, you probably heard of those.
Yes.
All of that information is a it's like a food. It's like a crop that can be harvested over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's not like they just look at it and they do their math on it and learn things. They can just keep using it. Companies can say, "Oh, I want to find out this from that," and then they can go in and take that. It's gold.
You
It's
know, we're
yeah.
we're talking a loss of our First Amendment rights. We're talk about privacy. You're talking about ring cameras that can tap into your house, flock cameras that can identify you to literally to your DNA. I was watching a post on X, seems where I get a lot of my information, of a guy who said, "You don't want to do this. You don't want to take a green laser to a flock camera because it will take it out. You definitely don't want to do that." But there are ways that apparently people are taking out flock cameras, because I just saw a post today that showed a mom, took a picture at her kid's school playground and a flock camera. So why on earth would you need a flock camera at the kid's school playground? And now they're going to come up with something, oh, it's for your child's safety. You know how this is going to go. Like, really? Who's monitoring that for child safety? That would be whom? Who's looking at this data? So we don't even know where all this data is going, who's collating it, why they're collating it, the information they're gathering on individuals, accessed by police or other individuals on data. And that makes mistakes. These devices are not foolproof. A man was arrested for some crime and he wasn't even in the state from a flock camera. So it's not to say they're not invincible. Um,
Yeah.
so we have some real surveillance issues. We're losing our freedom so quickly. It's evaporating in front of us, and we're asking everybody again. This is a call out before we get into what parents can do in their homes. Theodore, we're going to get to that at the end of the show, but this is an opportunity for everyone to know what's going on in your area. But I want to talk about toys because I'm a pediatrician. I love toys. You should see what my office looks like behind me. But I know you have some toys, and I was wondering if you would share with our attendees some of your favorite toys for frequency checking. Show us what you got.
Sure. So let me start out with this. This is a radon detector, right? People talk about needing to have to check what your radon, or in addition, right? If there's a fire, you want to know that. But what about EMF? So I have a series of EMF meters. This is for wireless. And you can see I have a very low level in my home, at least compared to other places in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to show you other devices and how they make this change. And then I have one for 5G frequencies, for higher frequencies. I have one for power line for EMF from high voltage power lines, and electric fields as well. I also have this one with Safe and Sound, and they all help me to know my exposure. And it's been so important for me to understand what the levels were in my home, because I discovered all these things. The first thing I found when I got a meter, I had cordless phone. They emit all the time. I did not know this at all until I got a meter and turned it on. And let me show you an example. I'm going to plug it in. So, and now I'm going to just set it down and unplug it.
So you see that, folks? Those are those deck phones that they rolled out everywhere after we lost our Princess telephones, our corded phones. Now we've got those things. Sure, you can walk around the house with them, and they are an EMF nightmare. And then you hold them up to your ear as well as you're right next to it. This is not good.
Yeah, I'll just do that one more time. So I have a little power strip here I'm turning on. Then there are
so we're having a good time playing with Alexa.
Alexa.
Show us what happens with Alexa. I have a whole parent handout on why kids should not have Alexa.
Oh yeah, so many reasons, right? Because they also spy on you and all kinds of things. So I'm going to plug it in. It takes a second for it to come on. Oh wait, did I? Let me see if it's. There we go. Okay. It's going to take a second for it to come on, but people have these near their beds, right?
Oh yeah.
Kids'
I've seen it.
bedrooms. They're even in like lollipop colors and they have animals. They're decorated all kinds of ways, just like cigarettes for kids.
Enticing.
Yeah.
I know. And I mean, do you really need Alexa in your home? I mean, it's a gadget. It's kind of amusing in a way, but
yeah, it takes a second to come on. Now it's coming on.
That's what you're getting, folks, for electromagnetic frequencies. Every time you're near that Alexa, you don't even know it, and some of you can feel it. Most of us won't feel it. It doesn't mean it's not having changes in your body. I'll talk about that in a second from a physician's perspective. But a recent party here in my house, and a wonderful young mom had showing me that her baby was sleeping nearby, and there she was showing me the of course the baby monitor, the Wi-Fi baby monitor, so she could be down the street in another house and the baby was sleeping and she can look at him on the Wi-Fi on the baby monitor. And I'm thinking, oh, that baby monitor is right near the baby's head. And a lot of parents, I researched how many parents are using these now. There was no data. I couldn't find a number, but they're very popular. But I want to know how many. It's not been studied.
Yeah. And, baby monitors, they changed this is a Wi-Fi Barbie. I'll show you her in a minute, but they changed how the baby monitors transmitted. And now they have DECT baby monitors that emit so much more than the baby monitors that were when my kids were young. They're now in their 20s. But this is Wi-Fi Barbie, and I'll turn her on too. So wireless toys, wireless speakers that look like stuffed animals. I have a bunch. They're just not right here, but things like this. It's going to take me a second. Let's see. It'll take me.
So this is to kind of calibrate and cut.
I can't find a Wi-Fi network.
I'll turn her off now.
Thank you. Right. We get our kids accommodated to certain things where it becomes the new normal. So by these introductions of Wi-Fi Barbie, your kid will think, oh, Wi-Fi is normal. It's a toy. It's a normal part of our lives. Just as an aside, when we were doing our Girl Scout cookie study ourselves and Moms Across America and Dr. Seneff, Stephanie Seneff, we wanted the Girl Scouts to make an organic regenerative badge. They didn't respond to that, but they had a 5G badge.
Yes, they did.
And we thought, we lost our minds. We were all Girl Scouts, a few decades ago, like a 5G badge, but we can't get an organic regenerative badge. This is what our society is promoting. So we're not only fighting at the town council, we're fighting cultural.
I can't find a Wi-Fi network.
Even Barbie's complaining, and cultural saturation of a cultural shift.
Can't wait to talk to you later.
I could wait, Barbie, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sorry, she had to turn it off.
Maybe she wants to get it on the podcast. This is our next podcast host is Wi-Fi Barbie, by the way. It's like with AI, of course, she's coming. But it's part of just saturating our children's entire sphere with technology. Okay. Whether it's Wi-Fi Barbie, the baby monitor, wherever. I've seen diapers with smart diapers, so parents know when the baby's diaper's wet. I'm like, oh gosh, you can't tell when the diaper's wet. You need a Wi-Fi diaper on your baby's bottom and their private parts to let you know that. I saw a Wi-Fi binky.
Yes.
It's like I literally wanted to buy it so I could look at that. I was like, I have to look at what this thing is. I can't really monitoring what the suck potential. I mean, I couldn't even imagine what somebody would need to know what a Wi-Fi binky. But any other further comments, because I want to get into, as we wrap up the last 10 minutes of our show today, parents might be going, or humans might be going, oh my God. We talked a little bit about what people can do in the community, but I really want to get into what families can do at home. But any other comments before we do? What can people do like that is simple and inexpensive, pragmatic, evidence-informed, practical? What can folks do? But any other comments before we get into that?
Just learning about this is really important. It's worth your time and effort. And also talk to your friends and neighbors, because what I realized when I started talking to people was like they'd never heard about this. So, there are parents organizing on, look, we don't need to give our kids cell phones till eighth grade, right? Not before eighth. It's called like something before eighth. There's like this whole movement. I think it needs to be older for cell phones, and of course, but there are kids getting cell phones who are 10, who are 9, who are 8. Like, we need to change the norm, and we can do that together by talking about it. So this is it. This is the time. It's not that the technology is already here and, oh, the genie's already out of the bottle. It's that it is going to be more. This robot revolution that 6G is for is robots everywhere, in our home, on the street, in the stores. This is what industry is planning. And unless we start to like talk about it and have the conversation, like, is this what we want? Yeah. It will use us rather than us using it as a tool, technology. So we have to be on it.
There is one other program I want you to mention for the Baby Safe program. Can you mention that before we get into the what folks can do? I love that program.
Yeah, the Baby Safe project. So that is, and I was at the press conference, and I was part of the development of some of those materials. And it's about pregnancy, protecting the baby, before it is born. So, because women will, put that phone right on the abdomen, which I did. I didn't know. You can rest it right on the top. The women in bed rest. My friend with her twins, she just had that laptop on her abdomen.
Oh, I know.
While she was, waiting, and she didn't know. She was like, why didn't anyone tell me? So Dr. Hugh Taylor, who's the chief of OBGYN at Yale, who did research showing damage to memory and increased hyperactivity in mice that were exposed to wireless radiation, gave a great talk at the press conference. And all of this is online. There's little videos that you can share in your community recommending, and there are hundreds of doctors and experts who've signed on, recommending keep that distance, reduce exposure in your home, like we're going to talk about. Use wired, not wireless. And don't have that cell phone. You want to have a distance. So the first thing to learn, if you want to reduce exposure, is distance. Is to start with distance. It's easy. Don't have devices near your body. Then you want to reduce the time that you're on the devices. So distance, time, because time adds up. So, and then you want to have choice. If you want to have low levels, you swap out for safer. Mm-hmm. That means, like, I'm talking to you on a wired computer. It's connected with Ethernet. That means I don't drop the Zoom call, because it's actually more efficient and works great. And I have a great signal because it's staying in the wire. It's not coming out and going into my body. And I have a wired mouse, actually. I know it works for me, and I don't use a wireless mouse. My printer, I have the wireless off. So I just plug in with a cord. If you have a printer, just know that it is emitting all the time, like your Wi-Fi router. So you can, unplug it when you're not using it, right? And that's like a great tip too, is when you're not using something,
unplug,
have it off. Nighttime, have an EMF sanctuary where you're lowering everything at night. So let's say and I've met so many families, and the parents are arguing, and one wants to do it one way and one doesn't really care and doesn't want to be, So turn it off when you're not using it. Easy step, first step. So at nighttime, you don't have the constant radiation. Don't have the Wi-Fi router in the room underneath your bed. Smart meters. Opt out of the smart meter. Don't have your bed up where your head is right on the wall, where the other side is a smart meter. That is both wireless and extremely low frequency fields, and actually dirty electricity. But that, even if you have an opt out on your meter, which I hope you are in a state that has it, if not organized, so you can have an opt out. But even if you do, it still has extremely low frequency fields. So you don't want to have your head on the wall where the electrical panel is right there. You don't want to have a big appliance actually on the other side of the wall too, like the refrigerator. So yeah, so they're just things you can do. And we have all of that on our website at Environmental Health Sciences. Baby Safe Project has a set of recommendations too. Easy, practical things you can do that are no cost, are time and distance and nighttime.
These are great tips for people. You named at least 7 or 8, by the way. And what we're talking about is reducing the toxic load overall. And all the things you mentioned are easily doable. And as a matter of fact, on your cell phone, you can turn off all the different antennas on your phone and just use the one you need, whether it's, cellular or your Wi-Fi. I turn off all the antennas on my phone or it keeps emitting, and I put it on airplane mode or I turn it off completely when I don't need it. And that's really hard for folks to do. But let's say if your kid or you have been EMF injured, and I know some people are so sensitive they can't even walk into certain places, you want to reground yourself and head out to increase your frequency, because your frequencies can be altered. We're frequency. So head out to a forest bathing. Great stuff from Japan on forest bathing. Walk barefoot in the forest. Going to the ocean and walking in the ocean can reground you as you get the electrons back in your body. You've heard about all the reducing the loads in your family. You've heard about all that. There are some homeopathic EMF remedies for those of you who want to look into those to help you offset EMF frequencies. There's even a homeopathic X-ray for those of you exposed to X-ray. So homeopathy can help you navigate EMFs. I don't expect Theodora to talk on this, sort of my terrain. Keep your terrain healthy. And while you're doing all this, the idea is to get back into social connection. We don't have to live our lives through devices. For us as humans, we need one-on-one is better in person. I'm so glad I could talk to Theodora across the country today. But stay human, stay connected. And when you're with people who you enjoy their company, your own energetic frequency rises. And whether that's in a choir, a sewing class, an exercise group, whatever that may be, because our energies, we are energetic. So things that are interfering with our own energetic capacity are certainly scary for our health. And you can actually even measure our own energetic frequencies. We actually know how our own frequencies are, and there are folks who can do that. So before we wrap up the end of the show, first I want to say thank you, not only for coming today, but for everything you do to help keep us safe from EMFs, and learning about this and educating ourselves and how we can protect ourselves and stop the onslaught. But I want any last words, and how can folks reach you and donate to your beautiful 501c3? So please, Theodora, share with us.
Sure. Yeah. So definitely sign up for our newsletter at Environmental Health Sciences, ehsciences.org. We have a wireless and EMF newsletter specifically for that. So when you go to the newsletters, there's a little pop-up. Make sure you're in the wireless and EMF newsletter. Number one, that way you can get our science summaries, our latest fact sheets, what's going on. If there's an action alert, like something at the federal level or at the state level that you can take action on. And that would be, and you can contact us, please do, at theodora@ehsciences.org. And I'm so thankful that you made it this far in the conversation. And so let's go. Let's fix this, because our kids are depending on us.
Thank you. Please check out her website, check out her information. Please have a look at my article on data monsters. That's what I call them, being a true pediatrician that I am, and why they are not good for our kids' health. Visit my Substack, and Anne has a great image for that. Maybe she can pop it up. But I want to say, folks, I'll see you next month. We have Dr. Sabine Hazan coming up, and we're talking all things Bifido on the third Tuesday of the month. Stay tuned for that. Please check out my new book and support Making Our Children Well. I'd love your feedback, info@gmoscience.org, and get a copy on Amazon. It's self-published by gmoscience.org. So on that final note, I want to say thank you to our guest today. There's my content. And see you next month. Remember, All of our 41 now episodes live on gmoscience.org/the new MDs. So on that happy note, happy Tuesday. And thanks again, Theodora.
Thank you.